Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. So, if you are coming into the room, make sure you let me know that you are here and happy Tuesday to you. I hope your week is off to a great start. So, if you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscription button below. Also, go ahead over to Instagram and give me a follow. Rhonda_Mary. Also, I have a page called RhondaMary Vids, as well as I'm on Twitter. I am RhondaMary. Okay. Sometimes it gets a little crossed up in my head because I got to remember what name is where, but it's some version of RhondaMary. You will find me over there. So go ahead and give me a follow. Always over there on Twitter talking big noise on there a good bit throughout the week. So yeah, let's link on Twitter. But anyway, so hey y'all coming into the room. Hey Pilu. Hey Freedom by me homesteading. Hey Akeem. So if you guys don't know, okay, the CDC is now no longer differentiating based on vaccination status. They are now finally acknowledging breakthrough cases and natural immunity, and that infections are actually pretty common. After a very tumultuous few years, I think going on about 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken, and it's crazy because the time has really just blurred together at this point. I mean, I feel like time has been passing by so quickly. Um, but within this time, okay, the CDC has lied, Big Pharma has ran off with your money, and the American people have lost. What have the American people lost? Oh, well, they've lost privacy, medical freedom, free speech, trust in media, and a stable economy. While vaccine makers and the pharmaceutical industry has been able to make, I mean, millions, if not billions of dollars. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Hello to everyone coming in the room. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article according to the New York Times. Um, and even talking about this and even thinking about this, it just makes me so mad that these people are looking like in a lot of ways going to either get away with their crimes, and in the instances that they're not going to get away with it, guess who the burden is going to fall on? Yep, that's right, you, the American taxpayer. But anyway, let's go ahead and check out this article. This is according to the New York Times. The CDC eases COVID guidelines, noting virus is here to stay. Well, if you have a little bit of common sense or you've been paying attention over the last couple of years, you would have known this. I mean, at minimum, at least a year ago. I mean, most of us, at least 2 years. New guidelines eliminate quarantines and put less emphasis on social distancing, routine surveillance testing, and contact tracing. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention loosened COVID-19 guidelines on Thursday, freeing schools and businesses from the onus of requiring unvaccinated people exposed to the virus to quarantine at home. The changes are a sharp move away from measures such as social distancing requirements and quarantining, which had polarized much of the country and effectively acknowledged the way many Americans have been navigating the pandemic for some time. The agency actions come as children across the country return to school and many offices have reopened. We know that COVID is here to stay. Greta Massetti, a CDC epidemiologist, said at a news briefing on Thursday. High levels of population immunity due to vaccination and previous infection and the many tools that we have available to protect people from severe illness and death have put us in a different place. You basically mean you got your bag and y'all have moved on with your lives for the most part. But let's keep reading. The CDC new guidelines come after more than 2 years of a pandemic in which more than 1 million Americans have died. With the highly contagious BA.5 subvariant of Omicron spreading, the United States is recording more than 100,000 cases and nearly 500 deaths on a day on average. But many Americans dispense with practices such as social distancing, quarantine, and mask wearing long ago. I think they are attempting to meet up with the reality that everyone in the public is pretty much done with this pandemic. Even how they're going as far as trying to blame it on the public, like, oh, it's the public, they're just tired of it. So we are basically, kind of like giving in to the public, and the public is caving and everybody's getting tired of this. When the truth is, if this was as deadly, as dangerous, as imminent, as, you know, important as they are trying to make it seem, you wouldn't have a problem with people following the regulations if it made sense, if it made sense over time, if people were seeing the results of this in their everyday lives. But when you have people that have gotten the shots, gotten the boosters, Joe Biden, and you're coming out and telling me, oh, well, I have COVID again. Even I believe the CEO of, I believe it's Pfizer, one of these vaccine companies, that is now also or recently dealing with COVID. If this is the product that you're selling, that's not the best sales pitch, if I had to say so myself. And I think many Americans have felt like this. And even as we're looking at the numbers, I believe they said 1 million people that may have died during the pandemic. Okay, to this day, I don't believe that there are any official numbers on what percentages of these people died with COVID versus from COVID. Okay, there were actual stories that were coming out where people were dying in car accidents, motorcycle accidents, and they were being counted as COVID deaths. We believe that the medical system was inflating these numbers or using these numbers to get the benefits during the COVID pandemic, because of the simple fact that if the country is practically on a lockdown and you are suspending elective services, and these hospitals and these medical facilities still need to pay their bills, they still need to pay their staff and all of these other things. Well, how are you going to recoup or account for that money? So it is absolutely reason to believe that there were some numbers being fudged. There are also studies coming out of, I believe this was Australia, that was also hinting to the fact that maybe 10%, and I'm going to say allegedly at this time until we get more information, but possibly only 10% of the numbers that we received actually died because of COVID, not not just with COVID. Okay. And so this has caused a big fallout. It's caused a huge distrust in the media. You have many people that have moved on with their everyday lives. You have some people that suspect that industries, possibly like the airline industry and other industries, when their CEOs would come out and say certain things, people aren't able to maintain a certain level of staffing. They're having to allow people to quarantine who have no actual symptoms for lengths at a time, starting to have a problem with this. And now we see them kind of reeling back on some of these restrictions. Not to even mention the fact, okay, must I remind you, Must I remind you that in the beginning, okay, Fauci, Biden, you had the news media, you had several politicians coming out saying that if you receive this vaccination, you would not get the virus. That was the initial narrative. Now, I know actual science and it evolves. You learn more over time, especially when you're dealing with public health issues and things of that matter. But let us not forget that many of the people that were saying this or were suspecting this were being told they were going to be censored, we're going to have videos banned, we're going to be kicked off of Twitter, okay? You have medical doctors who were being bullied, who were being threatened, some that have almost been practically outcast because of coming and stepping up and telling the truth and saying, well, these are my findings, this is what I'm seeing. And the people that were stepping outside of that were maligned for years. And you will have some people say, oh, they never said that. We knew that, you know, getting this vaccine didn't automatically mean that you wouldn't be affected by COVID. We always knew that there was still a chance that you would get COVID, but you shouldn't die from it. Lies, 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 lies. Not only was a narrative at the beginning that you would in fact not get COVID, but absolutely that you wouldn't die from it. And we've seen both of those things not be true in a lot of cases. If you need a quick reminder, please allow me to give you one. Here's a clip here of Joe Biden.
You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Yeah. The various shots that people are getting now cover that. You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. Yeah.
Because let's be clear and let's get some things on the record and let's keep these things in our archives, because how it's going is people love to years later, oh, I didn't say that, I didn't mean it like that, nobody ever said that. It's the same thing. I forgot what it's called, and I'm kind of comparing this. Is I don't think it's really the same thing, but it's a phenomenon that I can't think of the terminology for it right now. But it's when groups of people, like large groups of people, remember logos or they remember just things in the media differently from how they happened at that time, right? So we'll remember like Chick-fil-A or something being spelled differently than how it currently is. And then you'll have these large numbers of population. And y'all tell me the name of it in the comments because I can't think of it right now. But you'll have these large groups of people that's like, I thought I remembered this, but maybe it wasn't. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, nah, y'all kind of getting over. You playing us. Some of them, I could see that happening. But some of them, like, nah, I really remember this. And I believe this is going to be the same thing that happens with COVID. They're going to try to gaslight us. They're going to treat us like we're crazy. They're going to scrub the internet. They're going to censor. They're going to be like, oh, no, nobody ever said that. Oh, no, we never believed that. That's not, no, that's not what happened, right? Then it'll be 10 years later, however many years later, and it'll say, oh, well, this was the official narrative all along. No, it wasn't. You're going back, you're changing information, you're scrubbing information, and you're trying to play us, okay? You're trying to play on our emotions.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Hey folks, guess you heard this morning I tested positive for COVID. When people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected.
Dr. Fauci says he has COVID again.
If you've done the right thing and gotten vaccinated, you deserve the freedom to be safe from COVID-19. And this morning, I learned I tested positive for COVID-19 as well.
With 3 doses that have been prevented not just from serious illness, but from getting this virus, this Omicron variant, and therefore giving it to others.
Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews is in quarantine for 7 days after testing positive to COVID.
I'm fully vaccinated. It gives me some comfort.
Anthony Albanese has just tested positive for coronavirus.
Having received 2 doses of AstraZeneca, it's a very effective vaccine, protection from symptomatic illness and therefore risk of transmission to others.
You're okay. You're not going to.
And this is just a few, but there's several examples of people in the media, public health officials, politicians saying, if you get this, you won't get COVID. And that was just absolutely not the case. I think there should be widespread apologies. I think that people who had their social medias deleted and this and that should be reinstated. I mean, Pfizer making to the tune of $40 billion just off the vaccine, if I'm not mistaken. That doesn't even include the therapeutics or the drugs that they are now offering to go towards COVID that you're supposed to be able to take. And so these people made their money, and it's like, all right, I guess, now we'll just treat the people like it's no difference. There's no difference between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated, when the facts were there all along. It was just a matter of whether you wanted to believe it or not, which was always that the people dying from COVID were overwhelmingly obese, overwhelmingly had 4 or more health issues. This was not affecting young people to the same extent. Young, healthy people, let me clarify, young, healthy people, and particularly children. Even much so, about 40% of parents have rejected the opportunity to vaccinate their children. And so what I find so interesting is the amount of people that will know the history of this country, some of the most gruesome things that they have done, use certain people and populations as test subjects, guinea pigs. The Tuskegee experiment is just one example, okay? Just one example of, one example of something historically of the government or public officials testing on people. And it's so many things that I talk about all the time, from the fact that we are now practically medically castrating children. Okay, if we want to talk about some of the absolute obscene things that are going on right in front of our eyes, a medical castration of children. You have women at the border who uteruses are being removed, having all type of procedures done on them. Okay, you have large numbers of women, particularly Black women, having hysterectomies done on them, which and C-sections done on them, which maybe even 1 in 4, possibly more, could be considered medical malpractice. Maybe 1 in 4 people actually needing these things. And I've talked about this stuff in the past, gave y'all the number breakdown, and I talk about this stuff a lot on my Instagram, RhondaMary Viz. If you're not following me, follow me over there. But this is even like modern, what I believe to be medical malpractice, and even huge numbers of people. I think maybe I don't even want to give the numbers because I don't even want to give them correctly, but a huge number of the population being affected by medical malpractice, probably like at the top of the list for deaths in America, and how people could see all of this and have no suspicion, just go into something blind with very little studies, knowing how long it usually takes to study vaccines and the history of other vaccines is mind-boggling to me. It's mind-boggling to me. Even knowing the relationship of the pharmaceutical industry and the FDA and how they go about approving drugs. Okay, the pharmaceutical industry provides 75% of the FDA's drug review budget. This is according to Forbes, and this was in 2018. 75% of the FDA's drug review is paid by the people that want to make sure they approve these drugs. What in people's mind is telling them that the American health industry is not a very much so for-profit industry? What is telling people when you have doctors who want to pretend that obesity and underlying health issues are a huge part of the deaths and the very, very ill that we're seeing from these viruses, right? Previously, and want to almost pretend as if that's secondary, as if, oh, well, yeah, a little bit, but let's turn a blind eye to that. And let's not really talk about that. Let's not get down to the bottom of that. Let's not get down to the bottom of obesity in America when nearly, half the population, I think over 40%, is considered obese. And to try to separate Big Pharma from its long history of not only being a for-profit industry, but also medical malpractice, untrustworthiness, experimenting on different populations. The conspiracy theorists should be vindicated. The Mandela effect. That's what I was trying to think of earlier. Thank y'all. And so, yes, it's very important to keep these things in the archives. This is going to be very similar to, I believe, going to be very similar to 9/11, the war in Afghanistan. They're going to come out 10, 20 years later and be like, oops, yeah, this was a screw up on our part. This is what we did wrong. But I mean, hey, that was 20 years ago. Who cares? Your great, great, great grandkids are already going to pay for the mistakes that we made or the exorbitant taxes that you'll now have to pay as a result of the failing economy, for the lockdowns and the money that we pushed into the economy and all these other things. But I mean, hey, you can't continue to screw up at your job, plumber, car salesman, beautician, a postman. But hey, the government, we can continue to screw up. We can lie. We can manipulate. We can change the narrative. We can run off with your money. We can charge you more money, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it because, oops, our bad. And so what has happened as what has happened to Americans as a result of this? What are some of the things that we're possibly going to be seeing coming up soon? Is, first of all, you already have parents who are not trusting this system. You have parents that are like, no, we are not feeling it. I kind of was willing to do it, to just jump out there. I was a little more scared, or whatever the reason may have been, but I just can't do this to my child, especially based on the science that unless children were chronically ill, I mean, the amount of children that were dying or getting very ill from COVID is almost like non-existent. And so more than 40% of parents of young kids say they will not get their child a COVID-19 vaccine survey finds. You had Twitter, social media, who was repeatedly banning users, banning people under the banner of misinformation. But come to find out, 2 years later, it wasn't misinformation. Y'all just had to catch up, obviously. And so, you had people who were being banned from these social medias. You had people being ran off of social media. You had doctors whose licenses were being threatened. Okay. And so now, let's not forget the amount of people who lost their jobs, lost their businesses. Imagine losing your business because virtually you had common sense. It is criminal. It is criminal to take a man's livelihood from him and then turn around and offer him $1,400. Okay? All of you who took out those PPP loans, the IRS has now just hired 80,000 new reps that are going to be coming for that money. I tried to tell people the government doesn't give anything for free. Anytime that the government offers you anything for free, you need to ask, what are you going to be losing for that? What are you going to be exchanging for that? And so you had, hundreds, thousands of people all over the country that were fired, lost businesses. Particularly in New York, you have 1,400 medical staff that were fired because they were unvaccinated. And so now a lot of those people are going to be suing. Okay. You had people who were denied. Now the CDC all of a sudden knows about natural immunity, which is, something that if you had common sense, common knowledge, something you may have learned in school, natural immunity is now in fact a thing. You had judges striking down people's lawsuits because, for the simple fact, if the CDC is not acknowledging natural immunity, then a judge can be like, oh, well, the CDC isn't acknowledging this. You are a risk to your employers. So, no, you're just fired. You can't recoup anything. Well, now some of those people are going to probably try to move these lawsuits further based on what's happening. In an Illinois hospital, they agreed to $10.3 million in a vaccine mandate settlement. More than 500 healthcare workers who challenged their Illinois hospital's COVID-19 vaccine mandate will divide an overall $10.3 million received in a settlement agreement. Okay. 13 North Shore University Health System employees sued in October 2021, alleging the hospital illegally refused to grant religious exemptions to the vaccine mandate. Liberty Counsel, which represented the workers, said the July 29th settlement agreement affects more than 500 current and former healthcare workers who were denied religious exemptions from the vaccine requirement. Okay. And, you know, a lot of this and some of this, even though this is going to be a hospital payout, right? But we have to remember a lot of the money that was paid into the funds, paid into these hospitals specifically to deal with COVID. So a lot of this falls back on the taxpayer, and the levels of what has happened and what they're allowed to do is just, I mean, just crazy to me. Now, I don't know, okay? But if I had to guess, and you were having issues with your car, and you invited, you took your car to a mechanic, and this mechanic, you allowed to work on your car 4 times, right? 4 times. And every time you invested the time, the money, everything it took to take your car to this mechanic, you put your trust in this mechanic. And 4 times, okay? After every time, you still had the same issue. Would you take your car to that same mechanic? I'm just curious. And if you're the person watching and you would take your car to that mechanic, well, I have a beautiful bridge that I would love to sell you right in the middle of Idaho, okay? Because at some point, you know, common sense ought to kick in. And I know at this point that you have a lot of people, and if you're not on Twitter, you should be, because you will see this. You will see this a lot. It's like every day, every few days, you have people, and these are random people. They can be people with 400 followers, 10,000 followers, 600 followers, 20,000 followers, saying how much they regret the vaccination, how it affected their bodies, and how some of them are chronically ill now, some of them are not able to work, and all of these other things. And I do want to say that I always have to remember to make this distinction, because we are up against a $1 billion propaganda machine. Okay, $1 billion. For years and years and years, they've studied us. And social media has only made it easier for them to study us. And you have these privacy concerns. And so you absolutely had some people who, for whatever reason, really thought that they were doing the right thing. They thought they were protecting their families. They thought they were protecting themselves or their grandmas, and they felt susceptible to this $1 billion industry. They felt susceptible to the propaganda machine. And for those people, I do have a certain level of empathy. I certainly do. What I don't have empathy for are the people who said that the unvaccinated should be banned from participating in public events, from going to restaurants, going to public schools, called us names, believe that our motives, or accused us, our motives of being impure, and all of these other awful things that were said and done. You had people snitching, on their neighbors, and all these other things that were happening. Saying people should be fired from their jobs, they should lose their pensions and their benefits. I just don't feel bad for those people in any sense of the word. For the people who now have 4 shots, booster shots, and are still talking about, how grateful they are to have their vaccines. Or they will also say, well, I haven't eaten in a restaurant in 2-3 years. I still wear a mask indoor and outdoor. And they continue to berate or have a snooty attitude towards non-vaxxers, as they themselves have had COVID more times than most of us non-vaxxed. I have no empathy for these people, and I want to make that very clear distinction, because they were a part of the problem. Instead of looking at us like we have every right to be skeptical of a system that is made money by very much so by keeping us ill, keeping us sick, keeping people oppressed, and all these other things. Sorry to say, I just have no remorse for those people. I'm reading this book, which is really good. I believe the name of it is called The Curriculum of Compulsory Schooling, and it's by, his last name I think is Gatto, Gatto, or maybe Grotto, Gratto. Anyway, I'll post it either tonight, like on my Twitter or my Instagram. But it's a really good book that I'm enjoying so far, and it talks about schooling, and it talks about how much of a pillar public schooling is to each facet of maintaining society and the status quo. It talks about how if public schooling wasn't exactly the way it is and nothing there is happening on accident. So when y'all be like, they should be learning taxes, they should be learning emotional intelligence, they should be learning coding, or whatever you feel like saying that the public school system should be doing today, most school districts absolutely don't give a crap about that, because the school system is operating exactly like they wanted it. But going on, this book talks about how the exact reason why they don't teach critical thinking in public schools is because it would threaten the very foundation of this system, the economic system, the communities, the moral fiber, every facet of the American system. Okay, because now once you have critical thinkers, you have people looking at big pharma differently. You have people looking at the food industry differently, the fashion industry differently, right? All of these different industries, the health industry, all of these different industries would be impacted if people were able to look at a thing, criticize it, and be like, nah, I don't want to participate in that because my critical thinking is telling me that natural immunity is still a thing, right? I don't want to participate in watching certain things coming out of Hollywood because I see the agendas and the stereotypes that they're trying to push. I don't want to participate in the things that the fashion industry is doing and promoting, because I know how it's pushing consumerism and pushing younger people into debt. I don't want to participate in the things that the health industry is doing because I don't want to forever be dependent on diabetic medication. I don't want to eat all of these processed foods or the things that they're trying to promote to me in a way is being promoted to me, because I don't want to be dependent on this health system. Right. And now you have more people building things, making things, planting things, growing things to escape and evade, this system. My critical thoughts would tell me laying on my back to have a baby works against gravity. When I think about it, it actually makes absolutely no sense whatsoever and increases my risk of having to have a C-section, right? Or having to have this doctor escalate this procedure. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have my baby at home, or I'm going to make sure I have a plan to do it in the way that I want to do it. And when it actually goes along with critical thought, right? But now you have less C-sections. Now you have less inductions, right? So when we have such a large number of people just going along with the narrative, just going along with what they're being told, just going along with the authority figures, right? Because you learned in school that you would be rewarded for doing as you're told. Do what you say. Don't lose this job. Don't lose this grade. Don't lose this ability to look like this upstanding citizen and get a pat on the back from your public officials like you did from your principal or your school teacher. Go vote and we'll give you a sticker. Grown human adult, right? That same system of reward and punishments. But if you go outside of the line, you're suspended, right? Like a student who questions the narrative, debates with the teacher, doesn't fit into this box of what it is. Now you become outcast. Now the students bully you. Now you probably end up dropping out of school and all of these other things when you don't want to be susceptible to the programming. And so I'm definitely gonna, post about this book because it's really good, and I already had this interest in homeschooling and unschooling and things like this, but the levels of the way these things are connected, it's just a great reminder of the connection and all of the things and all of the ways and all of the industries that they are working in to push forward these agendas against the American people, which oftentimes just leads to fattening their pockets and leaves us with nothing. Record inflation, an economy that is suffering, people having to take on 2 or 3 jobs, and everything else that is happening as a result of this. Even the people who got vaccinated, most of these people are still getting COVID. You're still getting reinfected. So what did you actually win? What did Americans get out of this? Even the numbers, 1 million people died. We believe many of those numbers to be fudged. And I hope that there's an agency out there that eventually is going to comb through these numbers and we'll get a better picture. But even those we believe to be fudged because a lot of those people died with COVID as opposed to from COVID. And so, it's just outlandish and frightening when we think about it. COVID rebound is surprisingly coming even without Paxlovid. Viral levels resurging more than 10% of untreated people with COVID-19, but early data hints that the rebound is even more pronounced after antiviral treatment. After the game-changing COVID-19 antiviral Paxlovid began to be used in late 2021, researchers noticed a perplexing trend. And some people taking the drug, symptoms and detectable virus vanished, only to mysteriously return days later. After months of grasping at straws, scientists are beginning to make some headway in understanding Paxlovid rebound. 2 recent studies suggest that it's surprisingly common for SARS-CoV-2 to return in untreated cases of COVID-19, while hinting that the virus's comeback is fiercer and more common in people who take Paxlovid. We are all seeing people who are taking this drug, doing really well, and then suddenly they're getting sick again. From the vaccines to the pills to the drug treatments, all of it is showing evidence of reinfection. While Big Pharma is still making money and the public is not being helped in a lot of ways. Thank you, Doug, so much for the $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Brody McFarland, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Eminem, thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Said, we now know the shots are not effective. We can safely assume they are not safe either. I believe that what we've experienced for the last few years, I believe in some part has come to a halt, as I would say, as it relates particularly to COVID, at least for the time being. Now you're going to see a lot of people talking about monkeypox. Please make sure we covered monkeypox here a week or two ago. Please make sure you are getting to the truth of what's happening at monkeypox. There is a actual study that released. This is easily accessible on Google, or you can use whatever platform to find a study. I believe I tweeted it. If not, I'm going to also try to find it so I can tweet that out. But it gives a breakdown of everything that they found with monkeypox. If you let these people propagandize you again, I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned. At this point in time, with the current data, and yes, data evolves, okay? It does. However, at this moment, if you allow fear or propaganda to drive you in a different direction from what the actual data is saying, you have learned nothing over the last few years. If you are a straight person or a gay person in a monogamous relationship and you run out here to try to get a monkeypox vaccine, I fear that you have learned absolutely nothing over the last few years. Okay. This vaccine is not only targeting a very specific demographic, but it's also targeting a demographic that would be more likely to be what I would consider a promiscuous. Okay. And every ounce of the current data is saying just that. And so if you do not understand history, if you don't care about history, you are doomed to repeat it. And I think that's a big part of why, not only are our rights and what the government is supposed to do and shouldn't be doing to its own citizens, I think that this is not as heavily taught or focused on as it should be, with good reason. We just talked about the foundation of public schools, and overall the theme is to follow orders, do this, think like this answer, you get rewarded. And even when people talk about, oh, if your child is homeschooled, they won't be socialized properly, they mean conformity. That's what they mean when they say that. When they say socialization, they mean conformity. They want you to send your child to these schools so your child can fall in line, think exactly like them. And so like I said, if you don't know history, you are doomed to repeat it. The COVID phenomenon has been a absolute, I would like to call it a failure. But I mean, in actuality, a lot of people came up. A lot of people came up. A lot of people that invested in stocks, got something under the table with these companies and this and the other came up. But as far as history, I would say this was an absolute failure in how it was handled. It may seem like a lot of people are moving on, but there are going to be a lot of lawsuits in the next few years that we'll be seeing play out. And it's unfortunate for a lot of us that were maligned, that were censored, that were lied on, and all these other things. We're supposed to just move on and pretend that this isn't happening, pretend that the CDC wasn't giving out competing narratives or was doing some very questionable things. And we're supposed to just move on. All the past is behind us. But like I said again, this is going to keep happening. This will repeat itself if you do not have more people that stand up, if that document this history, that put this in their archives, that tell their children and their great grandchildren about this, that talk to their loved ones about the importance of critical thinking, that understand the propaganda that we're facing many times in the media and through politics, and all of these other things. And so, it honestly hurts my feelings. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that you are going to have several people that deal with long-term health effects whose heart was either in the right place or maybe their fear got the best of them, whichever it may be. And I want to see these absolute criminals held accountable. If that'll ever happen, I just don't know. I guess we'll just have to see. And from everything we've seen over the last 2 years, it looks like a conspiracy theorist is just somebody who tells the truth 6 months to a year to 2 years in advance. So, but anyway. Long Time Son said, if people sue the state, who pays the bill? The people, the taxpayer. That's how that happens. And so, in a lot of ways, it's really screwed up because, the government is a monopoly. Like the car mechanic, if he screws up on my car the fourth time, I get to not pay him a fifth and say, hey, I'm taking my business elsewhere. And, people will try to say that kind of with government. Oh, well, if you don't like how this person is doing whatever, just vote in a different person. There is some truth to that. However, we have to take a look at the failures of the voting system, the polls, possible cheating and things like that that's going on. And not to even mention, we're at the point where government has gotten so big. It's some of these people that are just long, like life term politicians. Just find it a little questionable, if I do say so myself, for at least quite a few of them. So those are some things to think about. But anyway, I hope A lot of the public has learned from this. I hope so. I really hope in my heart that that's the case. I've seen a lot of people from all across the political spectrums coming forward, saying, we have questions about this. We're hesitant about this. Even some of the protests that happened, people from, all across the political spectrum and from different political ideologies coming together saying, nah, like, this is one thing we can agree on. You have a lot of people that have been affected negatively by the vaccines and things like that have come out to share their story. And I hope people have learned from this. And I hope that going forward, the wool cannot be pulled over the eyes of Americans in this grand fashion ever again to this extent. But it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. So that's all I can say about that. But I kind of wanted to hopefully, like I said, I think this kind of has come to a summation and people are kind of moving on. So I plan to also move forward with the COVID thing. I just wanted to kind of have this on a record of this is where we started, and this is all of the negative things that has happened since, and this is what we've gained out of this, which much I don't believe has been beneficial, but been a detriment to the American people. And so unless something just outrageous happens, I've talked about this a lot over the last few years, and I want you to know that conspiracy theorists, I believe you have been, vindicated. So Godspeed. But anyway, thank you to everyone who joined me tonight. If you are not subscribed to this channel, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscription button below. Also, give this video a thumbs up. If you are not following me on social media, please go give me a follow on Twitter. I am RhondaMary. Also on Instagram, Rhonda_Mary and RhondaMary Vids. Thank you to everyone who super chatted tonight, and we will be talking soon. Y'all have a good night. Bye.